Welcome to the Local Business Show. Seth Greene is a nationally recognized marketer who is the nation's foremost authority on growing local businesses through direct response marketing podcasts, and the only person to be nominated 3 times for the GKIC Dan Kennedy Marketer of the Year Award. Seth will be joined by a capable cohort of co-hosts who are each local business marketing experts in their own right. On the podcast, Seth and his co-hosts brings together small business owners and other local business authorities to share with you their inspiring stories of how they started their local business, how they serve their local business clients, how they grow their local business, and how you can too. And now, here's your host, Seth Greene.
Welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be joined by attorney Keith Wesoloski of Wesolowski.com, the founder and principal, a law firm focused on advising small business leaders and entrepreneurs, which is all of us. Keith, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on your show, Seth.
Our pleasure. Let's go back in time a little bit. How did you get started? What inspired you to go to law school?
What I love about the legal profession is the problem-solving aspect of it. I'm kind of one of those guys that grew up loving games, loving board games, loving puzzles, and to be able to go through the intellectual exercise of solving puzzles in order to help people, that's probably one of the most satisfying parts of the legal profession.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. Did you know what you wanted to focus on when you went to law school?
Kind of, but not for certain. When I first went to law school, I had gone straight through from undergrad. I was an econ philosophy double major. Thought I was probably going to be interested in business to some degree. But that said, I hadn't really known exactly where in that business world I might fit in. And really, to a large extent, you kind of figure it out once you actually start seeing the real world on the other side.
Absolutely. And what drew you to working with business owners and entrepreneurs?
I just love the business environment, the ability in our system to go out there, put out your own shingle, make your own widgets, go out and sell something to try to make the world a better place. And the idea of being able to help those kinds of entrepreneurial folks achieve their American dream is, very satisfying.
I bet. So can you give us an example? What does law for business owners and entrepreneurs mean?
Okay. So what that means, it can start at the very beginning. The challenge is so many people, they go into business because they have a skill or they have a passion. That baker who loves to bake cakes. Just because they're a great baker, it doesn't necessarily mean that they know the first thing about business or the kinds of legal challenges that go with that. So how do you organize that business as a legal entity? What kind of traps are there for you if, heaven forbid, something goes wrong at the bakery? Whether that's employees that screw up, whether that's a customer that slips and falls, any number of other regulatory challenges that affect all businesses. So kind of, what I love to be able to do is I love to deal with those legal issues so that entrepreneur can really focus on their passion.
That makes a lot of sense. So what are some of the most common mistakes you see business owners making?
The most common mistakes they all kind of trace their roots into this notion that the business owner will somehow be able to fix things when the time happens. And so from the perspective of setting up a business entity, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects that somebody is going to have a disaster at their office. And so they think that, well, we don't necessarily need to take the proactive steps to build a structure and protect ourselves now. We'll be able to revisit it later. Or a similar thing among business partners is the mistake of we've always been friends and that we'll always be able to work things out. And the reality of it is that, you hate to say it, people change when there's a big pile of money on the table and you have to decide who gets paid, who doesn't. Or things get really messy if all of a sudden there's somebody sitting at the table that wasn't one of the guys or one of the gals way back when, like the ex-wife who is suing one of the business partners, or heaven forbid, if one of the business partners passed away tragically.
That all certainly could have a dramatic impact on your business. What are some of the steps we can take to protect ourselves?
The real key on all of this is kind of that ounce of prevention beats the pound of cure. What makes sense is to kind of sit down with your advisors before you get too deep into things. Have a strategy, have a game plan, write it all out. It's much better to have a plan and execute on that plan at the very beginning before you're deep into the business, before you're into the fog of war for the business. And by doing that, everybody, we are still all friends at that point in time. We can all treat each other fairly, and we're not worried about or negotiating against one another because all of a sudden this point means that somebody gets paid and somebody doesn't get paid.
What are you finding are some of the things that have changed in the business world, in the legal world since COVID?
Oh my goodness. I would say the number one lesson, there are lessons learned and there are also things that have changed. The number one lesson learned is that the businesses that had their stuff together are the businesses that are better positioned to pivot and are most likely to survive and thrive in the pandemic environment. For example, there was a lot of stimulus directed at small businesses and a lot of programs, great programs, put out there by the Small Business Administration. The first thing that they did when accepting your application for those aid programs is ask you for all sorts of documentation to show that you're a legitimate business. And the problem is if you didn't have your stuff together, you weren't going to be able to jump through those hoops. If you didn't have your CPA already on top of your various tax documents, you wouldn't be able to show to Uncle Sam that you were a legitimate taxpayer who, could legitimately claim these types of stimulus. So I think that that's the key lesson to be learned. Another big thing that we found in the industry is just the use of technology. You and I were able to have this conversation, over the internet, over Zoom. And back in the old days, I'd have to come into a studio. I'd have to meet you face to face, wherever that meant. And it means that we're much more able to interact with each other in ways that we never thought possible.
Absolutely. Does that bring up any different liability or legal issues?
It certainly does, in the sense that you're kind of broadcasting yourself out there in ways that you wouldn't have thought of before. It makes doing due diligence on your business partners a lot more appropriate because, hey, if I meet you at a coffee meeting and we're able to meet face to face, I might get a better sense of who you are. And if you're in my community, I can kind of do my research about you. But if you're kind of that face that I just see on Zoom once in a while, I don't necessarily know what makes you tick. And who knows, maybe you're presenting a great front that, need to do some more due diligence on, but I might not if I'm not thinking about that.
Absolutely. With all the success you've had helping business owners, what's your biggest challenge now?
I'd say the biggest challenge that we're seeing getting out of things is, as we move forward, finding the right talent to keep growing the business and to keep meeting the needs of the many customers that we have. I'd say that the labor market right now has been heavily disrupted. There are many appropriate reasons for that, but the key is how do you find the right folks to build out your team and what is that team going to look like in the future?
How do you get the word out? How do clients find you?
I would say we're very heavily networked out there. We are out there kind of beating the pavement with our local chamber, kind of a shout out to the Southtowns Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're out there in a variety of different networking organizations as well. That has led to a certain amount of organic kind of word of mouth conversation about us. And then ultimately you do good work, you have satisfied customers, you turn those customers into champions and build the practice that way.
And then how do you differentiate yourself from other attorneys who might practice in the same areas that you do?
I would differentiate myself in a few different ways. One way that I do it is through my pedigree. For me, that's Yale undergrad, William and Mary Law School, kind of top tier schools. I started my career on Wall Street, so I'm not going to see anything that's bigger than something I haven't done before. The other way, another way that I distinguish myself is I've actually run my own business that was not a law practice. So been there, done that in terms of the challenges that go with being an employer, with running a business, sweating about how you're going to make payroll, understanding a profit and loss statement. So those are all things that I can translate over to that mom and pop small business owner.
That makes you probably a whole lot more relatable when you get the struggles that business owners go through.
Absolutely. I mean, it's too easy for that outside advisor to just say, hey, you need to sell more. You look great. Thanks a lot. What kind of advice is that? But to be able to actually dissect kind of what are you doing operationally? How is this working for you? Here are a few things that work for me. Here are a few lessons that I learned the hard way. Those are ways that you can provide a little bit more mentoring to your client.
Absolutely. Your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you do?
Again, it is the ability to be out there and to help people. And to, if you're driving around town and you're able to point to a restaurant and say, hey, I helped that restaurateur get up and running. Or you look at a piece of commercial property like, hey, I know the owner of that. I helped them get into this property. To be able to help people build things and to kind of enjoy their successes and their pride in what they're building.
That is beautiful. I know you are a voracious learner. What are some of your favorite books that have helped shape you and get you to where you are today?
Let's see. I'm a great big fan of Michael Lewis and his books, whether that is Moneyball, whether that's Liar's Poker. So anything of his I'm reading. Another great book that I love, it's called The Score Will Take Care of Itself. It's by the son of the late, great coach of the San Francisco 49ers, Bill Walsh. And it kind of goes through how Bill Walsh organized the 49ers from, the coaching he gave Joe Montana all the way down to the instructions he gave the travel agent. And the real point about it, it's not a football book. It's actually a business book. And the whole point of it is that as the business owner, as the business leader, it is incumbent on you to map out how you want your organization to operate. And if you have a clearly defined plan and you execute on that plan, the score will take care of itself and you'll find that you're winning the games you want to win.
That is a great recommendation for our business owners and entrepreneurs listening or watching who want to learn more. What is the best way for them to get in touch with you and to learn more?
Sure. Best way to reach out to us is via our website, www.wesolowskilaw.com. And we're always happy to chat with people in the entrepreneurial space and help get them going in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, we greatly appreciate your time. We know it's incredibly valuable. This has been Seth Greene here with Keith Wesoloski. Keith, thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Seth.
Thanks everybody for watching or listening, and we'll see you next time.